Let's go 250s.
Okay, I'm down. Yeah. Give me your breakdown, man. What stood out to you over the weekend of them racing at Washougal?
Dude, what stood out to me is Tom Vialle finally riding how we all know he can ride.
For sure.
Moto 1 was like really commanding in the sense of off the start, it was Tom and Haiden, up Horsepower Hill, and what stood out to me is that KTM 250 SXF was out dragging that YZ 250F, which we all know that YZ is like the powerhouse at Star Racing Yamaha. And Tom just kept that rear wheel to the ground, got the power to the ground, and did not let off. Like, he was like, I'm not being denied today, and just didn't really look back from there.
Yeah, to strengthen your point too, is he took the inside line in that corner going up the hill where Danger Boy went wide. So he had all of the speed and momentum going up the hill, but Tom was not about to let him have it, which that was really cool to see. I'm a younger brother, so I'm used to always getting beat by my older brother. It gets demeaning after a while. So for Tom, I was just glad to see him finally get a win, because after a while he was probably getting tired of always getting second, thirds, fourths, and almost winning and then having it not work out. So hopefully this really rejuvenates him in terms of like, I'm still in this. Maybe not championships wise, but just as a contender to win races.
For sure, because for a while there, it was like, what's going on with Tom? I mean, we're seeing him tip over, and a lot of it was in the corners. Like, I think of Southwick, it's kind of a rolling right-hander, and just goes down there. Redbud, similar sort of situation. We saw something at High Point, too, kind of in a rut, just a little off balance, fell over again. He ultimately gave the lead to Haiden. Haiden fell over. Tom was able to capitalize on that, and they got into a little bit of a lap time battle there, where it was like, who can go a little bit faster. They're trading literally about tenths of a second. Tom was just holding his own and didn't let Haiden sneak up into that like 1.5 seconds, under 2 second range. Because that's pretty much I don't want to sound corny here, but danger zone, right? Like when you're that close to a rider, that blood is in the water, and especially with a guy like Haiden Deegan.
Yeah.
You know, when he's on you and he senses that moment of weakness, he's not going to let up. And Tom was just able to hold him off just for long enough to where he was able to cruise on into his second Moto win of the year.
Yeah, good for him, man. He did a good job not overriding the track, because you often hear about how deceiving Washougal can be in terms of it looking very tacky, but having a rather slippery, hard base underneath that tacky dirt on top. And it seems like Danger Boy kind of fell victim to that in the first Moto with him kind of going down. But second Moto, that did not seem to hold him back in terms of overriding the track. It seemed like he still pushed like he normally does, Danger Boy, but kept it on 2 wheels the whole time.
For sure, yeah, and it was really surprising for me to hear Haiden talk about the bike, because he normally isn't one to talk about, hey, my bike wasn't working so good. Normally, if he's at fault for losing the moto or not having that good of a performance, he usually takes that blame on. Pretty surprising to see him point to the bike. Not saying that I don't believe it or anything like that, but I was like one of the first times where I really took note of that. And he came out from Moto 2, sat behind Tom for a little while, and then eventually just made his pass. And Tom just took one too many ruts to the left, and Haiden was like, well, thanks, dude. Like, he just took the inside and pretty much just checked out from there. So it was really cool to see Haiden, although it's 54 points. This championship is pretty much over, besides an injury, something really bizarre going on, like 2 DNFs or something like that. And, it's just really cool to see Haiden still riding at that competitive level and not giving his competitors an inch. And he's not just phoning it in or anything like that. We got 3 to go, and I don't know what else to say at this point other than the kid's great.
Yeah, I wonder what bike changes they made from first to second Moto. Last Shop Talk, we talked about what setting they may start the day off with at Washougal, and if they'd be using a setting from the weekend before. And I wonder if maybe that had any of an influence over some of the comments, or just what Haiden was feeling in first Moto. But it sounds like they made whatever changes they did make, or if they didn't make any, was the right move for the second Moto based on how we rode. And yeah, good point, man. Like this weekend, we saw the consistency that we've come to see out of Haiden this year. And what I mean by that is his very high consistency of either winning the Moto or being somewhere in the top 3 or top 5. Outside of that is when it's more surprising, when he lands outside of there for finishing result. Dude, Joe Shimoda, 3-3. I feel like kind of got overshadowed a little bit just because the Tom getting his win, Haiden going down, but the dude just keeps getting hotter.
It seems like as the season goes on, Joe just keeps working to his form, doing his thing, and it's good to see him go 3-3. I know it's no secret, like Honda hired him to win. He wants to win. Honda wants him to win. He's actually behind Chance Hymas in the point standings, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me before the season, I would have thought Joe would have been ahead of Chance, but it just speaks volumes to how well that Chance is riding. Some lackluster performances on Joe's part. I don't mean to be negative or mean or anything like that, but
just in reference to what he expects.
Exactly. And, you know, Joe's a high caliber rider. I mean, he's a multi-time race winner, both Supercross and Motocross. I think he expects to be on the podium every single weekend, if not winning. For him to have a solid day, 3-3, that's really good. I still think one of the areas that Joe's still struggling with is starts. We just don't see him get a whole shot. So it just makes me question to myself and wonder, like, what would have happened if Joe got a whole shot at Washougal or started right behind Tom and Haiden? How could that have changed the whole outlook of the moto?
Yeah, good point. Really good point, man. Him and Kitchen had just seemed to struggle to get off the line. And we both thought Kitchen was going to have a really good race this weekend, or past weekend, going off his momentum from the round before. But just goes to show you that the home track advantage doesn't always work in your favor because of the amount of variables you have when it comes to racing.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of attention on you. You got friends, family there. You're probably getting pulled in a million different directions, it feels like, on top of your normal race day routines and tasks and everything like that. So, I mean, Kitchen just didn't really get off the line in Moto 1. And then Washougal, I mean, it's a really tricky track. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but he just wasn't really working forward in Moto 1. I don't know if it was more of him, not just the other riders around him are just riding to a high level and it's just really hard to make passes on that track, or what the whole deal was, but he kind of just sat there like outside of the top 10. And in Moto 2, he had a much better showing. He finished fourth, so much improved over Moto 1. But I think we both expected him to at least be on the podium at his home race and after a dominant 1-1 performance. Yeah,
I would expect him to have more of a finish like Shimoda had, just in the sense of the consistency in the finish. So that's got to be bugging him a little bit because you know he's got the skill. And it's right there, but those starts have been getting them sometimes. I still expect great things from Levi. I don't think this is necessarily a downward spiral or anything like that. At all. Yeah. I think it's just one of those weirdo oddball rounds that you get every once in a while. Dude, shout out to Ryder DeFrancisco. Cool to see him getting up there. The other young guy, Jet Reynolds, Julian Bomer being in 11th. We're starting to see this younger generation really starting to work their way into that top 10. I guess the youngest of this younger generation.
Yeah, for sure. And especially for a guy like Jet Reynolds, who has just been through the mud, like hell and back with injuries. I mean, just kind of seems like the injury bug has just been biting him. And so it's just cool to see him on the Muck-Off FXR Club MX Yamaha team, a team that can take riders and really rebuild them. I think of a guy like Cody Schock, who kind of went through a little bit of an odd stage with Phoenix Racing Honda, went to Yamaha and he had a breakout year almost in Supercross. I know he kind of broke out a couple years ago in the 450 class, but kind of rejuvenated his career a little bit in Supercross. And I think that Jet Reynolds could be another one of those guys to where maybe a year or two down the track that we could see him really turn his career around from what we have been seeing him on Team Green and Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki.
Agreed. I do not think we've seen the best that he has to offer yet. Pierce Brown's another one of those riders that was highly touted coming up, and he seems to just consistently keep getting better. It might be taking a little while, but the dude's good, and he's only a hair off the top pace a lot of times. So it's going to be fun watching how this whole class kind of mixes together over time, because you know the younger guys are going to keep getting better. You know the guys that are not veterans but have been in the class for a while aren't going to want to give up their spots.
Absolutely.
Now I'm remembering this. Where would RJ Hampshire have been?
Oh,
like,
forgot about him.
Dude, yes, he hasn't just been racing. Fuck, that's a wild card every single moto.
Yeah.
These results would be way different.
For sure. I do think as RJ has gotten older and has more experience, the wild moments have calmed down a little bit. I think it was 21 or 22 at Southwick. He went down like 4 separate times in the moto. It was like insane. It was crazy how many times he tucked the front end in one single moto. Yeah. But now, I mean, he's got a Supercross championship under his belt. He's won more races. I think he's calmed down a little bit more. I would expect him to be sitting in top 3 in points.
For sure.
I wonder like how Hayden's results would have changed, because I think RJ is a guy, he doesn't give an inch.
No, he'd bump him back.
Yeah, exactly. So the aggressive riding would just be at an all-time high. And with how exciting and action-packed these 250 motos have been, I think they'd only just be better if you thrown in a wild card in RJ Hampshire.
For sure. Somebody would not have gotten the moto finish that they would have gotten this year. I don't mean as in DNF, but they would have gone from a 5th to like a 25th or 30th finish just because somebody was going to bang bars with him, or be, I don't want to say victim, but they were going to be in the way of RJ and him getting to the front. So
For sure.
bummer to not see him in there.
Absolutely. Well, let's focus on the 450 class then. Switch gears a little bit. Chase Sexton, 7 moto wins in a row. I think he's really just making up for last year, not getting any.
Yeah.
Now he's got 7 in a row.
And the times when Tomac would always get the edge on him.
For sure.
It's glad to see.
Yeah, it's Sexton is a guy that is just, he never says die. He will ride to the end, but it kind of seems that we were talking about this off camera. It seems as if he's really changed his race strategy a little bit. I think back to 2022 when he was racing Eli Tomac, and he just had this really good sprint speed and would just attack. I think back to last year where Jet Lawrence would get a phenomenal start and Chase would be right up on him, and then we'd see the mistake or the crash or something that would hinder his performance or his result in that moto. But it seems as if now, like, even if he gets a 5th place start, 6th place start, he really just works his way into the moto and lets that moto win come to him rather than him forcing the issue and forcing the envelope a little bit.
He seems to be the most fit guy in that class.
We just haven't seen Hunter Lawrence have that same pep in his step, if you will, since that Redbud crash. And so I think he just knows that, Sexton that is, I think Sexton just knows that, hey, these guys are just going to come back to me. Like, I'm the fittest, I'm the fastest. Like, this is my class. I have the red plate. I have the points lead. Like, I'm just going to wait for my time.
That, and I wonder how much, if there's much of a difference for just the weight of the bike and how much muscle it takes to handle a 450 versus a 250. But yeah, I wonder if that injury is kind of slowing down Hunter a little bit.
It does seem like it. Like, I'm not saying that just it outright is.
Yeah.
But since that Redbud crash, I just haven't seen that same intensity, that same outright speed with Hunter. He's kind of sliding back in the motos rather than, I mean, Hunter's a really strong and fit guy. I mean, up to that Redbud crash, I mean, he was
Chasing
right
Jet.
there with Jet, and right there with Chase. We didn't see those. So it just, something happened in that Redbud crash, in my opinion, to where it changed his physical fitness or his stamina throughout the moto.
Yeah, and understandably, man, I think we all know as riders, it can often take a while for our confidence to grow. We need time on the bike and just keep getting better and better and better. But man, one minor crash or tip over or big crash can really reset our confidence. Maybe not take it all the way back, but definitely knock it down a couple points. And it doesn't normally just come back right away. With Sexton, it seems to, he seems to really be good at forgetting what happened last moto or last weekend or whatever and just laying it all down. But
and if you're Hunter in the HRC Honda camp, the break couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, you guys needed to stop the bleeding. I mean, 7 moto wins to chase his name, or 7 consecutive moto wins to chase his name. I mean, he's 28 points down. That's over a full moto down with only 3 to go. I mean, it's crunch time. Like, he needs to beat Chase pretty much every single moto from here on out.
He does. Yeah, he's got to just beat him straight up.
Absolutely.
Jason Anderson, I was hoping to see him do well, and he definitely did. You pointed out, which I did not catch this, but it was my favorite highlight, was him, second moto, first lap.
Yes.
Going all the way up to
pass.
first. That was freaking sweet.
Yeah, all the way on the far right, up Horsepower Hill, to the far left in the following corner, and goes from third to first. I mean, it was just an unreal display of line choice, racecraft, and speed from Jason Anderson. And one of the things that we were talking about in this the JBI race recap for Spring Creek is how well Jason can get the power to the ground. There was another display up Horsepower Hill. I mean, that rear wheel just didn't lift off the ground. He was stuck on the throttle, waiting the rear end, and it really paid off for him because he led a majority of Moto 2. Bummer to see him not get the Moto win because that would have been really cool. He hasn't gotten one in a little while. I think it goes back to 2022. And obviously no one else won besides Jet in 23. So, so yeah. I mean, Jason just had a really good performance. And to be honest, like, on paper, we all should have seen this coming. I think Jason is more of a hard pack rider than like a Southwick maybe, where it's sandier or really soft track, kind of like a Spring Creek a little bit. And I mean, he grew up in New Mexico. He knows hard pack.
For sure.
And I just think Jason, he thrives in those type of environments, and that type of dirt to where he knows what the bike is going to do. It really looks like that 24 KX450 is working awesome for him.
It does.
It looks like he's able to maneuver around lines or hot braking bumps or do whatever he wants to do on the bike.
Mm-hmm. You pointed out during the broadcast 2 different lines, I think. I guess it was Hunter and Sexton that took going into a corner with the braking bump. One doubled over it and the other one hit the braking bump, then jumped the bump itself.
Yeah. I think it was, you could either go like bounce off of one and double in and go right. This is just after the finish line. Or you can kind of double single your way onto the inside.
Yeah.
And it's quite a bit different. We saw in the 250 Moto 2, I think with Tom and Haiden, they were both kind of trading those lines. And it definitely seemed like if you were to go single, double into the corner, it was a lot smoother and faster.
Yeah, it was really fun watching the variety of lines that people were taking and how they timed the bumps going through the track. And you pointed out there's quite a fair amount of ruts this year for Washougal compared to some of the previous years where the track's a little bit drier.
Yeah, I mean, there was some 180s right after the section that we were just talking about. I mean, you do the finish line, it kind of goes left, right, and then it goes into a 180 left where we saw a Chase Sexton pass Jason Anderson, Moto 2. I mean, there was at least 5 to 6 really deep ruts just in that one corner, and then you get thrown into another 180 right with a bunch of ruts where we saw Haiden pass Tom Vialle. And then the corner after that didn't have as many, but that's the same corner where Aaron Plessinger saw the bike and Chase was able to get around him. But it just seemed to be a lot more readier than other Washougal years, especially with Washougal having a harder base, being on the West Coast.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, Washougal, it does get a lot of snow. It's in the Pacific Northwest, but it still has a hard base to it. And I was just pretty surprised to see some ruts, even up Horsepower Hill. It seemed like there were some ruts. And
then to touch on Plessinger, you highlighted what a great first moto start, just ripping around the track, picking out great lines. My heart just can't help but break for the poor guy.
Yeah.
Because he consistently puts himself in really good positions to start off the moto, being right up there. And God, now more than a few times in motocross and in supercross, he's leading the damn race.
Yeah.
And something happens.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And he's one of my favorite guys to watch win just because I just love seeing the emotion pour out of a rider when they work that hard for something. I mean, he earned his win this year in San Diego and during Supercross. So it's just really cool to see him win. He always gives a great podium interview. He's a really nice guy. He seems like a really genuine, authentic guy. So yeah, for Plessinger, heart goes out to him for stalling it in Moto 1. But overall, just what a good season.
Big time.
I think he's right up there for third in the points, if not in third already. I have to triple check on that. I'll throw it up for you guys on the screen now. And it just seems to be probably his best 450 season aboard that 450 SXF.
I know he may have some new guests on the line.
I was just going to say.
Coming back soon, so that's going to put, not a wrench, but just some wild cards in the stack that we've been normally having this year.
Especially riders that are in the upper echelon on the result seats.
Yes.
I mean, I think of Eli Tomac, kind of sounds like Bud's Creek. We do have Unadilla before Bud's. So, but speaking of Unadilla, it sounds like Cooper Webb is going to be back. And then I think a certain German rider might show up and play a spoiler.
Yeah, and you never know how good that dude's going to fucking be because he could go 1-1. It's nothing.
I don't doubt it. I think we all are guilty of forgetting how good Ken Roczen is. There's times where it's just like, he doesn't have the best round and whatever, and he comes out and wins the next weekend. And the dude is just unreal. And especially at Unadilla, I mean, multiple 1-1 performances. He's no stranger to going fast at Unadilla. So I'm just going to go out on record and say it. If Ken Roczen races, I think he's going to win Unadilla.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. That's, I think, a bit of a tall order. I could see him maybe get a moto win. I think he might get tired. But I have no idea what his fitness is like. None. So this is just assuming he hasn't, he's not just fully up to fitness, but hopefully he is, because I want to see that. Justin Cooper, man, another guy that knows how to put himself up front and in good spots. And he always finishes pretty strong. Second moto being a 7th place finish, he can definitely do better than that.
Yeah.
But it's not like the dudes beating him or slouches. And I think it goes to show you the depth of that field. You got to race from the minute that gate drops to when that checkered flag waves. Because if you take any break during that time, somebody's going to get you.
Yeah, he did have a crash Moto 2. And I think he slid back to that 8th, 9th, 10th spot, I want to say. So he did have to work his way back up to that 7th place finish in Moto 2. I mean, he's from New York, and we're going into his home race. So I'm really excited to see what Justin Cooper can do.
Man, well, fun weekend of racing. Maybe not as energetic or energetic as the past weekends. but still a fun time watching dirt bikes get raced around the track. Like anytime I get to watch that, that's a good weekend.
Absolutely. It for sure is. I couldn't agree more. We'll be back with a Unadilla preview show just because there is going to be so 2 weeks off. Enjoy the weekend off for those riders of you. You guys have really deserved
seriously.
it.
Thank you guys for the entertainment.
For sure. And then home stretch, 3 to go. Kind of seems like these championships are getting wrapped maybe a little prematurely, but I mean, respectfully so, those guys have really earned it. And I'm just really looking forward to Unadilla and hopefully having some new fresh blood out on the gate.
Thank you guys so much for watching. All JBI suspension services and parts can be found at ridejbi.com.